All right, let's dive into Squid Game Season 2. Seems like everyone's buzzing about it. You guys have sent in tons of reviews, articles, even some pretty intense Twitter threads. So I guess the question is, does Season 2 live up to all the hype?
Well, it's tough because season one was just so powerful, you know? I mean, those games, they were brutal. Yeah. But it went deeper than that. The show really got into that desperation, like how far people will go when they're promised wealth, which honestly is kind of a reflection of real life, right?
Life. Yeah, for sure. And the psychology of it all, like you're watching these characters make horrible decisions, but you kind of get why they're doing it.
Exactly. So now with season two, a lot of critics are wondering, did they capture that same magic or is it just more the same, you know?
Right, and I think the ending is a good place to start. I've seen some fans, like at Happy Fun Time on Twitter, call it boring, while others think it sets up a whole new chapter. What do you think?
That's interesting. It seems like people are reacting based on what they expected. You know, some people want a clear ending, everything wrapped up neatly. But season two leaves things open ended, which can be frustrating if you're not into that kind of ambiguity.
Yeah, that makes sense. But even besides the ending, the whole feel of the season is different. Like, season 1 was super gritty and realistic, but season 2 feels more theatrical, maybe.
Oh, it's definitely a stylistic shift. Think about the sets. Season one felt almost claustrophobic, like the players are trapped. Now the games are way more elaborate, almost fantastical. It's like they're leaning into the absurdity of it all.
Yeah, I can see that. And the games themselves have changed too. Alliances, sabotage. It feels like a whole new level of strategy.
Right, and I think that reflects a bigger change in the show's focus. Season one was all about survival, every man for himself. But season two is more about navigating relationships, the power dynamics, the choices you make when the stakes are high, which some people found more engaging than the shock value of the first season.
Okay, so we've got new games, new style, even a shift away from Gihun as the main character. Critics are divided, fans are debating, but is there anyone who's going to absolutely love this season?
Well, if you're into morally gray characters, you know, the kind of characters that make you question right and wrong, season two definitely delivers on that. It really puts those characters through the ringer, makes them face their own darkness, the consequences of their choices.
And it sounds like we're going to delve even deeper into the characters behind the games, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, like the frontman, for example. His backstory adds a whole other layer to the power dynamics.
Yeah, it's like we're finally seeing who's pulling the strings.
Right.
And it's not pretty, but it does make you wonder how he ended up like that. What kind of choices led him down that path?
And that's one of the things season two does really well. It goes beyond just showing the violence. It forces you to think about the systems that create it, you know, how desperation and power can corrupt people.
Right, even people who might have started with good intentions. Which brings us back to some of those reactions we've seen online. There's been a lot of anger about how certain characters are treated, especially the LGBTQ plus representation.
Yeah, that's definitely a sensitive topic. And for a lot of viewers, it's a valid concern. It raises important questions about whose stories are being told and who's being left out.
It's a good reminder that even a show as popular as Squid Game still has room to grow, to be more inclusive and representative.
Absolutely. And it also ties into one of the main themes that runs through both seasons, economic inequality. It's not just background noise, it's a driving force.
Yeah, like the way the games are structured. It's not just about winning money. It's about escaping a system that's rigged against you.
Exactly. The games become a metaphor for society, where the wealthy and powerful exploit everyone else.
So even though the show is set in this crazy, over-the-top world, it's hard not to see the parallels to our own reality.
Right, that's what's so brilliant about Squid Game. It uses these exaggerated scenarios to expose those anxieties we all have
Hmm.
about debt, social mobility, feeling trapped.
And in a way, maybe the change in tone from that gritty realism to something more stylized actually emphasizes that point.
It's like they're saying, look, this is all kind of absurd, but it's also a reflection of the world we live in.
Yeah, there's definitely a layer of dark humor in there, even some satire. But it doesn't lose sight of the bigger message.
Right, and speaking of which, there's been some discussion about the violence in season two. Some people feel like it's less impactful, maybe even gratuitous.
Yeah, I've heard that too. Is it just a case of diminishing returns, like we've become numb to violence on screen?
It's a tough question. I mean, the show has always been violent. It's part of what makes it so gripping. But maybe in season two, the shock value has worn off a bit. The focus has shifted more to the psychological stuff, the betrayals, the mind
So
games.
the violence is still there,
Yeah.
but it's not the main attraction anymore.
Yeah, and that might actually be a good thing. It makes you pay more attention to the characters, their motivations, their relationships.
instead of just being caught up in the spectacle of it all.
Exactly. It's not just about watching people die. It's about understanding what led them to that point. The desperation, the broken systems, the human flaws.
So going back to our original question, is Squid Game Season 2 worth the hype? It sounds like it depends on what you're looking for.
Definitely.
Hmm.
If you want a repeat of season 1, you might be disappointed. But if you're open to something different, a show that's willing to take risks, to explore deeper themes, then I think season 2 offers a really rewarding experience.
It's not just about the games anymore. It's about the human stories at the heart of it all.
Exactly. And those stories stay with you. They make you think about the world in a different way.
Yeah, and it seems like in this season, it's not so clear-cut who's good and who's bad anymore.
Right? It's like everyone's somewhere in between. You start to see how, even in those extreme situations, people are capable of both good and bad. It's kind of a disturbing thought, but it's also a reality we have to confront.
Especially when you think about how some systems actually encourage that kind of self-preservation over empathy.
Exactly.
And that reminds me of something you mentioned earlier
Hmm.
about the show being a commentary on systems that perpetuate violence, not just for entertainment, but for control.
Right, like think about those VIPs, the ones who bet on the players' lives. It's a pretty clear critique of how wealth and power can make people desensitized to suffering.
It's like the show is holding up a mirror to society, making us ask ourselves if we're part of the problem.
It's a tough question, but an important one.
So for you listening out there, does this resonate with you? Think about the systems in your own life. Where do you see these themes playing out?
It's not always easy to admit, but we all benefit from some systems that harm others. And recognizing that is the first step towards change.
It's like the show is saying, look beyond the surface, beyond the violence and the spectacle, and really think about the bigger issues.
And that's what makes Squid Game so powerful both seasons. It's not just about giving answers, it's about starting conversations, challenging our assumptions.
So even though season 2 maybe didn't have that same shock factor, it sounds like it still has a lot to offer.
Definitely, it's a chance to engage with complex ideas, to think critically about our own biases and our role in the world.
And to remember that even in the darkest stories, there's always hope in asking questions and trying to understand.
Absolutely. It's about striving for a better future.
Well said. I think that's a perfect note to end on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Squid Game Season 2.
It's been a great discussion.
Remember to keep exploring, keep questioning, keep diving deep. We'll see you next time.